Hello, and welcome to Open Wounds Podcast. I'm your host, Candice. This podcast is about healing the wounds that you can't see and leading a revolution against oppressive systems that keep them open. We're going to talk about really practical tools for managing complex PTSD, as well as dive into relevant current day topics that make healing a daily practice. You can follow us at IG at Open Wounds Podcast or watch on YouTube at Open Wounds Podcast. Please rate, review, like, subscribe, all the things, and enjoy this week's episode.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Open Wounds Podcast. Today, I have a guest with me. Her name is Katie, and her published name is CF Micky. And she is going to talk to us today about her book. It's all about narcissistic personality disorder and identifying if that's someone that you may know or have a relationship with and are experiencing that type of relationship with someone. And then she's going to share with us a little bit about, her story and how she ended up becoming a published author. So welcome to the podcast, Katie.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I know you've written a book, and I know you have some work you do helping people who have experienced relationships with narcissism. So can you share with us how you ended up deciding you really wanted to make this your career and dive into this?
Well, I never ever in my wildest dreams would have thought that I would be here in this spot doing this. I am a 61-year-old grandmother of 6, mother of 3, and married for 33 years, always searching for answers for my husband's medical condition. And it wasn't until our 28th year of marriage, with the help of the medical staff, that I was getting answers. So that was just altering once I had a name for it. And it was narcissistic personality disorder. And then my next challenge was learning all I could about it, because I wanted to help. I wanted to help him. I wanted our marriage improved. When I married, I wanted a life partner. I had no idea that I'd be 61 on my own.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting because I've heard that narcissistic personality disorder isn't commonly diagnosed straight to the patient, because most of them don't think there's anything wrong with them. And it's the family members coming in to therapy or doctors or people and saying, I'm just having so much problems. I don't know how to help this person, or I don't know why they won't come in to you themselves. So can you explain a little bit about how you even got to the diagnosis? Because I feel like so many people out there are in the same situation you are, and the person that they're either married to, or it's their child or whoever, won't go get help. So can you talk about how you were able to do that?
Well, it was honestly kind of by fluke. I had been seeing a counselor quite a bit, and in at the doctor's over headaches, chronic headaches, muscle spasms. Like, living with him was affecting my health. And I was going into the counselor trying to put the pieces together. And it wasn't just mental, it was turning into physical.
Wow.
And so then the one day after harvest, he's sitting at the table and he says, "Katie, I'm depressed." And I said, "I know you are, but I can't do anything about that." And so he said, "Will you book me an appointment?"
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Yes, I will." So we booked an appointment, and we were in the waiting room, and they called his name, and he got up and he looked at me and he said, "Well, aren't you coming?" I said, "Only if you want me to, because I know where this is going. I'm going to be blamed for everything in the end."
Right.
And we got into the doctor's office, and he said, "Well, what do I tell him?" And I said, "I want you to be honest.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. Let's get some answers, and let's be honest." So the doctor had him fill out a survey or a questionnaire in there. And as he's filling it out on the computer, he's looking at me and he said, "This doesn't look good." And I said, "I don't care." I said, "We're here for help." And the doctor came in and looked at it and then looked at me and said, "Have you ever felt threatened for your life?" Well, I said no, but that's not the truth.
Right, because he's sitting right next to you. It's not a great
Exactly
approach by the doctor right there. I mean, he really fumbled the ball on that.
So then he put him on medication, and we had to go back in 6 weeks for reassessment. So that happened. And the first thing the doctor said when we got in there was, "I couldn't let you leave last time without medicating you." And it was all I could do was not break out cry, because I'm thinking 28 years of marriage and we're finally getting help.
Right.
And, but the doctor warned him. The doctor at that point doubled his medication at that point.
Oh, wow.
And he warned him, "Don't go off of it once you get feeling better, because you'll be right back to square one."
Yeah.
Well, this medication affects the libido, and he wasn't happy about that.
Yeah, that's common for those medications to decrease the libido.
Yeah, and to me, I actually had somebody I could talk to, and that part didn't bother me. And so I was trying to encourage him to stay on the medication, but then he took offense because I was trying to drug him. Because this is where the paranoia starts in. He's not looking at the benefit of our relationship right now.
Right.
The paranoia is stepping in, and he went off the medication. So after that, I went in once a month to see the counselor and the doctor, and he kept saying, "What's he doing now? What's he doing now?"
Oh, okay.
And so that's how finally the doctor looked at me and he said, "He's MPD." And I said, what is that?
Yeah.
And he said, "Narcissistic personality disorder." So, of course, doctor visits are quick and short.
Right. Yes.
So I'm in my truck waiting for my counselor appointment, and I'm Googling it on the phone.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it wasn't just one or two, it was the whole 10.
Yeah.
Like the whole 10 and all I could do was break out and cry. Like, I finally have a name.
Yeah, like your life starts to make sense at that point, because before that, you're just like, you have an inkling that something's wrong, but you can't figure out what it is, right? And then especially with narcissistic personality disorder, they usually don't take any sort of self-responsibility. So it's the partner always trying to figure out, like, did I do something? Am I not nurturing enough? Am I not supportive enough? And so you tend to self-blame. So I feel like it's such a revelation and a relief once you figure out, I wasn't doing something wrong all these years.
Yeah.
It was, this person has this medical diagnosis.
Well, honestly, I can honestly say, if I would have known what he had in our early years of marriage, number one, I wouldn't have married him.
Right.
And number two, I wouldn't have caved like I did. Like, I always backed down, and my boundaries were down. Like, they were just stripped right away. And I would have held tight had I known more.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think the other thing that you were talking about with not marrying them, we see mostly statistically with narcissistic personality disorder, there's a really, really low rate of them ever improving or changing, because there's not that internal self-reflection happening. It's very externalized. Everything is someone else's fault. It's someone else's. I think there's some research that says, like, it's a very high prevalence in domestic abuse and domestic violence. And there's a very high prevalence of people that are incarcerated because they don't ever, it's never their fault. No matter what happens, it's never their fault. So the fact that, it's not that we don't love and care about these people and want the best for them, but they need to do the work themselves. And usually they're not either capable or willing to do so. So you started putting the puzzle pieces together. Did you go into your counselor's appointment at that point and go, oh my gosh, I know what it is now?
Well, there were several incidences with physical abuse and that happening in the house, and I'm telling her about one of the instances, and she looked at me and she said, "If your daughters were in that position, what would you tell them?" And I said, "To leave." And she said, "Why aren't you?" And I said, number one, I want to give my son the opportunity to farm. And I know his dad won't do that. And I love this man. Like I honestly love this man, and even one counselor I went to, she phoned me up ahead of time and she said, I noticed you have an appointment with me. How can I prepare? What are you coming in for? And I said, I need tools in how to deal with narcissistic personality disorder. I went into her office, told her everything. An hour later, at the end of it, she charged me $165 and she said, I want you to avoid him as much as possible. And I looked at her and I said, he's my husband. I'm telling you now, avoid him as much as possible.
Yeah, which isn't, especially if you have children you're trying to raise with this person, that's a really difficult situation because you have to communicate on like, oh, so-and-so has football practice today, or this one has the dentist, or I have to, especially because from what my understanding is with narcissistic personality disorder, they, like you said, that paranoia is part of it. They want to know where you are all the time, what you're doing, who you're talking to. So you do need to, even for your own safety, communicate with them about, I'm going to the grocery store, and then after that, I'm taking little Susie to the ballet practice or whatever, right? So you can't not communicate with them, right?
Well, yeah, like how do you have a relationship if you can't communicate?
Yeah.
And when I look back on our whole relationship, and I'm at the counselor's, and she said, it sounds like you were a possession as opposed to a wife. And when you get thinking about that, how many times did I tell him, I'm your wife, not your child?
Yeah.
But, and probably that was probably one of the hardest pills to swallow, is realizing that everything is contractual for them. You do this for me, I do that for you. Everything is contractual. There's no unconditional love there at all. I was there to build him up. And narcissists tend to pick strong people so that those people can build them up, help them with their image, and then once everything is comfortable, then they slowly start tearing you down.
Yeah.
And controlling you.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that people misunderstand about narcissism is they think these people, which it's commonly diagnosed in men, we see it most often in men, but that doesn't mean it can't exist in females. But we think they have a big head. We think they're full of themselves. We think they have so much ego and that they're just like grandiose thinking. But it really is coming from this underlying wounded inner child of, I'm not good enough. Nobody likes me. I don't belong. Like there's a lot of fear and a lot of self-loathing at the core of them. And so they're like swinging the pendulum to the other side and overcompensating, right? So then the partner is part of this dance of like, help me appear to be amazing. Help me appear to be great. And I need you to like shine and polish me, basically, right?
Well, yeah, they're very insecure people, and they don't have the ability to self-reflect. That's and after I had left, one of his schoolmates I saw at the grocery store, and she asked how I was doing, and I said fine. And she said, Brent has always been different. And I said to her, I'm okay with different. I'm not okay with abuse.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the issue too. We often see, if you could, like, it's not common for a narcissist to divulge their own childhood or their own past, but if you know them intimately and you get to know their extended family, you'll see where it came from in their own childhood. If which makes it difficult for when we're in relationships with these people to not feel bad for them and not feel sorry, because if we know how they were raised and we know how they were treated as children, we completely understand and empathize with how they got to where they are. But then there becomes a time where it becomes intolerable. So can you talk about, like, what was the catalyst? All these therapists and people are telling you to leave and to avoid him. So what was the tipping point where you said, okay, I'm ready to let this go. I can't keep going on and risking my own safety?
Well, one spring after seeding, we were going into town, and I saw both of my daughters at different times, and they both said to me, "What is going on, Mom? You look terrible." And I was worn out, and I thought about that and my role here on the farm, and my role was increasing and his was decreasing. And at that point, I thought, it doesn't matter how hard I work, it is never enough.
Yeah, yeah.
And I've had different ranchers and different men pop up to me and say, I can remember going to your place and you were outside working and he was in the house. I said, yes.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I started to look after my health a little bit more. But when it's the physical abuse started increasing, and he gives off an aura, like you can feel it. And I came home the one day from town and I walked in the house. I could feel it. Yeah, and I asked him how the day went, and he goes, "Oh, fine, never said nothing." And to make a long story short, he ended up threatening our son to shoot him and put him 10 feet under where he belongs.
Oh, wow.
And I confronted him about this, and he started to laugh and belittle his behavior. "Oh, Katie, you don't think I'd do that." And I looked at him and said, "The words came out of your mouth, so what is going through your head?"
Yeah.
Well, then he starts to cry. Then we're in at the marriage counselors. Second session in at the marriage counselor, he's not even paying attention and doing his part of what's required. And she looked at him and said, "Am I right to assume you brought your wife in here to change and you don't have to?" Yeah, I guess so. So then she pulled me over to another room and she said, "You seem to understand your husband's mental condition." And I said, "I do." And she said, "You better figure it out for yourself because it's going to get worse."
And I wanted to ask, because I've noticed this pattern where with the narcissist, they tend to want to get children involved. Like if they haven't had any kids with their partner yet, it's urgent to get them pregnant. And it's urgent to use the children as a pawn very frequently to manipulate the wife. So once you have a baby there, that's a tool for the narcissist. And I don't even know if this is conscious or subconscious that they do this, but it is what happens. So can you talk about, like, how, as the kids were growing up, like, because a lot of what I see is a lot of women leaving when the kids are really young. So the fact that you were able to protect your kids and everyone stayed alive and stayed safe for all those decades is a little different of a story. So can you talk about how you guys were able to navigate when they were little and they're crying, or when they were in adolescence and they were being rebellious? Like, how did he not lose it and become really violent towards everybody?
Our kids were really, I guess you want to say, groomed. Like they could feel the aura. And when they were fairly young, we were down at the barn and grinding chop for the pigs, and I had both little ones, holding on to the hands of both little ones, and I was looking after the grinder while he ran back to the shop to get some more tools, and it's grinding feed, and all of a sudden I had to shut it off because it was overflowing. And he came back and he literally just lost it on me in front of the kids. And later on that night, he said to me, "Why didn't you take the kids and leave when I was hollering at you like that?" And I said, "For the first time in my life, I learned what scared stiff was." I said, I couldn't move if I even wanted to.
Oh, wow.
So at an early age, everybody learned how to disperse. And even in the high school era, I have to say, we used to have cousins that would come by and spend the weekend and have meals. And she commented, she said, one of the last times that we were ever with you at your house, she said something funny was said at the table. And she said all the kids looked at their dad to see if it was okay to laugh. She said that's when I knew there was something serious going on.
Yeah, yeah. You bring up a good point about the nervous system response, or whatever you want to call it, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So you clearly had a freeze response where you couldn't move. You were just like, your brain's just like shut off and you're just frozen in time. So you reminded me of my own childhood now talking about this, where when my dad would fly into his rage episodes, we would all find different corners of the house to hide in. So sometimes you'd be hiding in a bedroom with your brother or sister. Sometimes you'd be hiding, outside. But you kind of learned, like you said, everybody can sense when it's coming. Everybody can sense the tension building. So they know to go run away and hide. Luckily, I have heard horror stories of the husband dragging people out of rooms and assaulting them and stuff like that. So I guess it's good for your sake that it never got to be that difficult, and everybody was able to kind of give him the space to blow off the steam. But so now your kids are all adults and you've divorced. And so that's another reason why women commonly don't leave, is because the custody battles. They know the man's going to drag them through court. And you did say you had a really long court battle. So was that with custody or without custody? Can you talk a little bit about that?
There was no custody. We went through a really hard time. I believe our son was around 8 or 9, and Brent grabbed me and pinned me by the throat in front of the kids. And later, I can remember my son saying, "Do you want me to tell everybody how you guys fight at home?"
Oh.
And I thought to myself, I've got to make this work, because I know if I leave, it's going to be that much worse. Yeah. So I have to stay, and I have to learn how to cope in this relationship until the kids leave.
Yeah. So yeah, that's one of the things too. A lot of people say that they either leave for the kids or they stay for the kids. It's kind of one of those things, because they know, and I've seen it, when the women do leave, the husband will drag them through court for decades until the kids are turned 18. And then there's also that instance where the husband will try to turn the kids against the parents, right? And so I think, like you said, sometimes it makes more sense to stay, because then you don't lose custody of the kids. You don't lose control of what the 100% of the input that they're getting every day. So when was it that you did finally decide to leave? The kids were out of the house by then.
Yes, the kids were out of the house, and there was an altercation again with physical abuse, and I knew I had no choice but to leave. We often talked about splitting up, and he said, "I'll just rent the land from you. I'll just, and I know what he's like. No games. If we're done, we're done. I'll take my share of the land and my half ton. And I offered him half the land, the yard site, all the equipment, and I'll just take half the land, my half ton, and walk away with some cash. And he said, no. When you start to act more fair, you can have. So technically, we're still battling.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's going on close to 7 years. We're just about settled. But if he would say, why would you hire a lawyer unless you want more than you deserve? Or, I want you to leave, just leave. Think of it as an adventure. So I knew I had to get a lawyer if I wanted to recoup. And honestly, this venture of battling with him in courts has been literally brutal.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for my kids, I totally understand why some women just give up and walk away.
Yeah.
But I feel that I'm fighting for my kids. I feel that I'm fighting for their family home.
Yeah.
He moved out and started stripping the house down, like light fixtures and stuff.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. And so
that sounds like a tactic to just hurt you guys. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And we have adult children.
Yeah.
Like they were in their 30s when I left. And after that incident, I went and talked to each one of my children separately, and I had full support from all of them.
Nice.
And the one said, I've been after you 5 years to leave. And I said, I couldn't leave until I exhausted all avenues of helping your dad. Because once I go, I'm gone.
Right.
I'm never coming back.
Yeah, you don't want to look back and feel like, I wish I would have tried harder. Or I wish I would have given it more, because, that, especially like you said, a strong woman, you're very determined. You want things to work, and you're committed, and you're true to your values. If you said this vow that you want it to work. So I completely understand that. So the kids are 30, you're going through this battle because you want to save this farmland so that they have access to it after you guys are no longer here, right?
Yeah. And the judge deemed that he farmed in 2019. And then a month before seeding started in 2020, he sent me an email and said he wasn't farming this year and wanted to rent it out, but he wouldn't rent it to our son.
Oh, okay.
So I said, we're sitting with $2 million in equipment and buildings here. I said, let's sit down and hammer it out, and you do what you want and I'll do what I want. And he refused and tendered the land. And this is when COVID was going on. Took the rental and did a night deposit at the bank. I got a call from another neighbor saying that these people were on the land. After I sent him an email saying I'm not agreeing to this.
Yeah.
And then litigation, he was threatening me with litigation. I had to actually kick the people off the land 2 different times. And they're down at their place signing up lease agreements without my knowledge, no phone call, no. So my lawyer actually couldn't believe what I was going through. And he had sent that family a letter stating all the laws that they were breaking.
Wow.
And it was a real battle. And then he threw it back at me that I could farm. So then I contacted our son and I said, do you want to go farming with your mom? And he said, yes.
Okay.
So ever since 2020, we have been on the land, farming the land.
Oh, nice. Okay. So, I mean, I think most people would be afraid to do that because he's so close by, right? A lot of women, once they get away, they want to get away, right? They don't want to be anywhere in the vicinity, especially because the fear of being attacked. They really, really fear for your life. And so I don't think most women would be bold enough to be like, yes, I'm going to go back and I'm going to farm this land. And he's like right over there and I can see his truck, because all the fear and the adrenaline and the cortisol would come rushing back. So how do you navigate that? Because that's really bold of you.
Well, I never, my son was on all the implements. I was more the support, going for parts, chemicals, and that sort of thing. The odd time I'd be running the combine. I was grateful. My husband had problems with his eyes, and so they they took his semi license away. In 2015, they took all his licenses away.
Oh.
And then the governing body of the province allowed him to have his driver's license because he was close to the limitations. He didn't meet them, and they still let him drive.
Wow.
And so I was grateful for that, because he couldn't always see far in
That's
advance.
nice.
You know?
Yeah, that is helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now you're still battling him in court. You're still doing this, which I think, like you said, is so exhausting and it takes so much energy and it's so draining. So how have you been able to keep up your own mental health and endurance through all of this?
Well, I still go to a counselor once a month, and now it's down to once every 2 months. But she always says it's like a backpack. You come in, unload the bricks, and you go out for another round. And that's what I've been doing now for probably 7-8 years.
Yeah.
Every month. And she has taught me tactics. Like, I didn't want to show up in court weak and start crying. So she's taught me skills and tactics on how to handle the stress.
Nice.
And how to deal with it. Like, when I left, you have to have a team. You need your support for your 2-3 friends. Yeah. You need a good therapist, and you need a good lawyer.
Yeah, I think that's another reason why women don't leave, is because they're so isolated. The husband or the partner has isolated them in such a way that they don't have any more friends, and he's burned the bridges with the family members. And so, like you said, it's very dangerous to leave if you don't have a supportive team around you. So you were able to get your support system, and now you can utilize them if you're having a bad day or whatnot, or find a place to stay if you need somebody to keep you safe for a while. Do you want to share some of the stress management and the tools that the therapist has taught you? Because I think, even if someone's not dealing with narcissistic personality disorder of someone in their life, the tools could help them in other areas as well.
Well, one of the main tools that I use quite a bit is because the stress level is really high. Yeah. You're getting the court documents, and then all of a sudden you're up here, and then it's just like, so you got to take it, acknowledge it, read it, put it on a shelf, find something different quick to change your mind and go on to a different task. And then if you want, come back and reread that so that you understand. But do not stay on one item for any length of time.
That's smart. Yeah. It's kind of because you'll start ruminating and worrying, and you'll spiral. Yes, that's a good point.
And it's, you can't control it.
Yeah.
A lot of things are out of your control, and you have to have faith. Like, we ended up having a binding trial. So that is where we're sitting in a boardroom, Brent and I and our lawyers, with a judge because of all the tax consequences of the business. And that judge leaves, and he has time to make the decision that if we can't come to an agreement, which we haven't come to agreement on anything. Yeah. And whatever he comes back and says, it's written in stone. And whatever the judge does is deemed fair.
Yeah.
Like, he has to make a fair ruling.
Yeah.
So for me, I wanted to still farm, I was disappointed I couldn't buy him out, but the judge was very fair in what he did. He gave him half the land, me half the land. Um, and I am fortunate to be on the farm here. I live on the farm and I farm with our son. My son's yard is right beside my quarter. So we've got security. The first time we were ever in court, it's the two lawyers and the judge. And my lawyer looked back at me and then at the judge. So the judge knew I was in court. And towards the end of the hearing, the judge looked directly at me, and he was a well-seasoned judge. Like, he's retired already. But he looked directly at me and then at my lawyer and said, I highly recommend that your client get camera surveillance on the farm.
Yeah, that's good that the judge understood what you were dealing with.
Yeah, and I'm thinking first ever, because when I fill the papers out, Brent has a rebuttal against them, and then I'm allowed to rebut against what he says. And I'm reading it and it's all lies, and it's just like, okay, relax. You know this. You know he's going to do this. So
Right.
how do you prove that he's lying? So I used a lot of 8x10 pictures.
Wow.
And I documented everything. And when we left the courtroom, my lawyer at that point said, I've never had a judge suggest camera surveillance. He was shocked over that. And that camera surveillance helped me out a lot on the farm.
Yeah. I mean, once the person knows that they are going to start being held accountable, they usually will try to find another victim. But, you know, I mean, sometimes it's enough of a deterrent to help you feel safe, and for them to be like, okay, I realize I can't push these buttons now. I've got to try to find something else.
But, you know, even with the cameras up, he would shut them off, he'd turn them on. Like, he was always defying court orders. He didn't care. He had no semi license, and he's driving into the yard with a semi.
Wow.
Like, he just, his sense of grandiose and entitlement was off the chart. Like, nobody was going to tell him what to do. I've even before I left, we had the doctors telling me that I have to report it to the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That's our
Right.
policing agent here. Every time he drove that semi, because he had no license. And he said, you have to report it. If he kills somebody or gets in an accident, then you're liable if you don't.
Oh, wow.
So he's filling up the semi with fertilizer down at the bins. I phone the police. They come here. They're down there talking to him. They drive out of the yard. Then he walks into the house, and I had our 2-year-old granddaughter with me, and I'm standing at the sink, and she grabs my leg tight and kind of tucks herself into my leg. And then he looks down and he bends down and goes, Grandma's a bee. Yes, Grandma's just a bee. You know, and says the whole word. Yeah. Like he, and then hopped in his truck, drove around to make sure the cops weren't around, hopped in the semi and drove out to the field.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing that becomes so frustrating for people in your situation is the lack of justice. You know what I mean? It seems like the system tends to uphold the abuser. And I hear this over and over again from women who've lost custody of their kids, or the husband's refusing to pay the child support, or he's stalking, or whatever it is that's happening. It seems like these guys just never, you know what I mean? There's never any consequences by the legal system for them until it's too late. You know what I mean? Until they've gone too far and someone's injured or dead or something, you know, terrible has happened. And so I think that's partially why, like you said, why they just give up. They don't want to go through this. It's not worth it. It's easier if I just go start a new life somewhere, a couple states or provinces over, because it's painful to see that the legal system and the justice system is so incapable of stopping these guys and, sometimes women from doing these behaviors.
Well, I guess too, and one thing that I have to add in there is when the courts make a ruling and they don't abide by it, then it's up to me to go back to the lawyer and make another application before talk about money flying out the window. Yeah. And I honestly believe that if there is a ruling made, the courts should make sure that ruling is abided to.
Yeah. That's the other thing too, is like you said, it's partially a way for the victim to be constantly punished, right? I'm going to break the court order, so then she has to take me back to court. So now she's punished for leaving me. And it's also a way for him to keep in your life. You know what I mean? I'm just going to torture her until the day I die by doing these things to where she's never at peace, which again, I think that's why your story is so unique, because you've knuckled it out. You're not giving up and you're not giving in. And so I think that's another thing too. So now that you guys are, close to wrapping it up, do you feel like there's going to be a sense of like freedom or relief for you once you cross that inevitable finish line?
Oh, I've been on pins and needles, butterflies in the tummy. Like I feel it, it's, I got actually the papers today, the last draft of the agreement of settlement. There's a few things we got to work out there, but I'm really hopeful that maybe by the end of the week we'll have something signed. Nice. We are that close. And yes, I'm very grateful. I've learned a lot. And I have to say, when it comes to the courts and lawyers, I kind of had some bad luck when it comes to some of the lawyers, over health wise and stuff. And the first lawyer I went to, I had put a retainer down, but I felt every time I went in there, she wasn't up on my case. And I didn't get a good feeling. So I was talking to one of the gentlemen that we do business with, and he suggested this other firm in the city. And they came in on a holiday Monday and they met with me. And I was in there for probably about 3 or 4 hours with two of them. And I felt so good. There was just so much connection in the farming knowledge and everything, that's the way I went. And then he got me back on the farm, and he came to visit me, and he said, Katie, I can't represent you anymore. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He said, I got a job offer I can't turn down. And I looked at him, and he said, it's with the firm that's representing your husband.
Oh, wow.
And I was crushed. I literally was crushed, because how is this going to work?
That seems like a conflict of interest. Now he has all this personal information on you that he can use against you.
Well, yeah, but he said, I'm not allowed to talk. He said, you've got 1 month to find a new lawyer. And he said, I'm not allowed to say anything about your case. And I honestly, in some of the goings on proceedings, I guess I have to say, I don't think he did divulge any information.
That's good.
And he gave me a list about 5 lawyers that he thought would be very good. So I started interviewing lawyers right away, and I found one. And we're 2 months away from discovery, or from going to court, and we're getting prepared for discovery. And I went in there, and here he collapsed that morning and was rushed off to the hospital.
Oh my goodness.
So about 3 weeks later, I get a phone call on a Monday from him that he can't represent me anymore. And I said, well, can we wait till you get better? And he said, I don't know if I'm ever practicing law again.
Oh, wow.
So then that was Monday. Tuesday, he phoned me and he said, we're so close. We're a month away from court. He said, I have to give your phone number to Brent's lawyer because you don't have representation yet. And I'm in the midst of trying to set up interviews. And so that was on Tuesday. Wednesday morning at 8:00, I was served here on the farm with papers that I had to go to discovery. And Brent's lawyer tried phoning me twice, and I refused to answer the phone. Yeah. And I just thought to myself, relax, it's a game. They're pressing you. It's a game. And I ended up getting a really good lawyer. And out of all those lawyers, she was the first one that told me she had another client that was talking about narcissistic abuse. And I have to say, I'm always kind of cautious bringing up the word narcissism when you go to hire anybody. And she says, I want to know more. And I said, you hit the nail on the head. So I just opened up about her. She wanted to know the podcast that I listened to, some knowledge, like she wanted to learn. Yeah. And she's a seasoned lawyer. And I just thought to myself, how many families are going through the court process and the legal system not having the knowledge on narcissism and the damage that it can do? Like, yeah. I'm grateful I didn't have any children, yeah. you know, going through this process.
Because I've seen it happen before, you know, where if there's kids involved, it's just like, he doesn't return them from their visit, or he won't meet you where you're supposed to be meeting, or he uses the kids' phone call time to harass you. And yeah, I think you're right on that. It does make it much easier when there's no kids. And the fact that this lawyer wanted to learn, I mean, I've seen a lot of lawyers who have narcissistic personality disorder, but I've also seen judges who were just totally ignorant to this concept, which is so sad because I would imagine there is a statistically high amount of people in these long dragged out court cases with narcissism, because that's part of why it's being long and dragged out, because they refuse to cooperate. They refuse to collaborate, right? And come to a middle ground with the people that they're at court with.
Like I've got adult children, and I can remember, oh, thank God I don't have young children, and I'm starting out on this. And then you get thinking of all those families that are going through this. And then you hear that Brent had said to one of the kids, you better figure it out between your mom and me because you're losing money every day. I've got adult children, and these are the games that he's still trying to play for control.
Yeah. Which, I mean, in some instances, once the kids are old enough to kind of see through, that's one of the sad things I have often tell when I have worked with women in the past who were in your situation. I said, you know, the kids, it's going to go one of two ways. They're eventually going to get old enough to where they can see him for who he is. And they're going to see through the crap, and they're going to know this guy is abusive and toxic and this isn't safe and I don't want a relationship with him. Or he will brainwash them and they will turn to his side. It's going to go one or the other, right? And so it's really such a testament to you and your relationship that all three of your kids still have a great relationship with you and they're not falling for his tactics and, you know, things like that. So is that, you know, it sounds like that's partially why you wrote this book, because you wanted to help other women who are experiencing what you've experienced.
Well, when I started writing, the counselors always asking you, are you journaling? Are you journaling? And after some of the court proceedings, I started hitting the computer because I was frustrated. And then I realized what a relief I was getting. And yes, I did start journaling. And then I joined a writing group. And but I kept coming back. I started this journey as healing trying to figure everything out and put all the pieces together. But I kept coming back. Why were my boundaries dropped? How come I allowed this? And so that's when I went right back into my childhood and started writing from my childhood so I can understand where my boundaries were knocked down.
Yeah.
And once I understood that, everything made sense. But when I was writing this book, I didn't want it to be a whiner or a complainer.
Yeah.
I was very conscious over trying to give examples, red flags, trying to point it out more of this is my journey, but this is an educational journey. This is what I learned. This is what I saw. These are the examples. Gray rocking, that's a great method, in getting through a lot of this. And I wanted it as an educational tool. And that's why I put a lot of cheat sheets in at the back of the book on questions to hire a lawyer or to hire a therapist, or a checklist if you're looking at leaving. I'm a big thing. I'm a big planner. So after the marriage counseling, when she pulled me aside, that day I went down and I bought a journal and I charted in it every night. Dates, times, names, everything. So when it came time to go to the lawyers, I had a Bible of information.
Yeah.
And I planned my exit. And in January, I had the lawyer fill out the court papers for separation, for leaving. And I said, don't file them yet. I waited until March for him to give me some sign that I don't have to go down this path. But I never had nothing. I literally put what I could in the back seat of my truck and went into the living room where he was eating dinner. And I said, you want me gone? I'm gone. But I'm not going to be responsible for your actions on this farm. And I got in my truck and I drove away after 33 years.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I've heard women be like, well, I'm afraid he'll find my journal that I'm writing things in. And I'm afraid that what if he finds my plans and da 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 da. So, but I do think, at least from all the domestic violence literature that I've read and working with women, it is very, very important to have a plan, because when he loses it and figures out you're going, he's going to chase you, he's going to stalk you, he's going to try to figure out where you're at. And so having a plan is to keep you safe, in these instances. So I thought that was really great that your book has all those things in there that women can use, or, anyone who's dealing with a narcissistic person that they need to get away from. Because I think, children of narcissists also deal with a lot of these things too. And so they may benefit from reading the book, even if they don't need the legal stuff. The gray rock method is great. And those other things that you're talking about there can help them. Yeah. So do you want to tell everybody what the name of your book is and where they can find it if they want to purchase it?
My book name is Cultivating Freedom by CF Micky. And it is on Amazon.
Okay.
And last time I checked, it was number 21 on the biography and memoirs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's really jumping up there. And it's, I have a website, cultivatingfreedom.ca. And if you go to that website, there's a link that takes you over to Amazon to purchase a book. And also, if you subscribe, you will get notifications of all the latest podcasts and papers that I put out for information.
Yeah, and you said you do some speaking engagements too. So if somebody is in your area, or when you're coming to a town to do speaking engagements, they could come watch you.
Yeah, I haven't really done too much. This event here in October is going to be the first one. I was asked to put a chapter in a compilation book with 21 other authors, and it's all on women's health and healing and empowerment. And that has hit the charts. It's very high. I think number 3 and number 13 and stuff on the charts in Amazon too. And that's called She Thriving.
Oh, nice.
And that is on Amazon too. That my chapter in that book is the aftermath of narcissistic abuse. Once you have gone through this journey, you realize the damage done internally and what you have to do to correct it, to get back to normal.
Yeah, like you were saying, it was affecting you physically. So there's so many things that, take time to heal, not just with your mind or your spirit and your self-worth, but also your physical body as well. And I just want to say you're so spirited and energetic, and it's very impressive because I see so oftentimes women coming out of these things and they're just beat down and they're just low and they're barely getting by through the day. So I think you like to see that you can get to this place where you're lively and you're energized and you're happy and you're laughing and smiling is really hopeful for a lot of people.
Actually, and I do give credit to my whole support system. When you're going through this, you're constantly repeating yourself, trying to comprehend like what actually happened. And that's like, right, my book, I went through 4 edits and formatting, and I'm still emotional reading it. And I just thought to myself, how could I ever have lived through that? But you don't think about what you're actually living through. You're surviving day to day and not even living.
Yeah. That's such a good point, because in the moment when it's happening, it doesn't feel real, right? And then the other thing is your brain is just worried on, I need to be alive. I need to stay alive. I need to get through this so that I'm not, I don't not make it through this scenario that I'm in right now. And then, like you said, there's so much of reality distortion with these relationships where you see something happening, but then when you try to confront them about it, they're twisting it, and your brain is like, wait, did I not see that? Did I hallucinate that? And so you make a good point of like having to process and process and process is going to take time, and for people to be patient with themselves and their support system to be patient with them as well. If you have a friend or someone who's coming out of one of these types of relationships, just to be patient with them, because it's going to take time for them to feel that they can trust their reality and they can trust their intuition and their inner knowing.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And not once did anybody say, "Oh God, Katie, enough. I've heard this already." Nobody ever said that to me. They gave me patience. And I realized what a benefit that was for me.
Yeah. So if anyone's listening and they have someone going through this, the book might be helpful for them as well, even if it's just a friend or, a neighbor or something like that. I think that's the other part from now where I'm at on this other side of my journey, where I feel more like I want to help people now that
Yes.
I've gotten to a place where I feel stable. And then you see people and you're like, oh my God, my neighbor, there's definitely something wrong there. Or I'm worried about this kid that I saw and, playing and their family. So sometimes these books and these podcasts or things like that is a helpful tool for someone who wants to, how do I help them? How can I help them? How can I be a part of their support system if they need it? So reading your book might give them some insight of like how to support the person to get through these things and be a part of that team as well.
Yeah, I've got quite a bit of terminology in the book, and like I said, I tried to make it an educational, but yet a story. In my writing group, one of the leaders of the group said, "Send me what you have," and I sent it to him, and he said to me, he got back to me, and he said, "I feel your pain." And I thought, I must be on a good path if I can project my pain and bring the reader in to actually do the journey with me. Because that's when you go to tell somebody, they just look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes the stories are so unbelievable. You're going, what? And then what happened? So, yeah, the fact that you were able to engage the reader in, and they were able to feel your experience, shows that you are onto something and that people need to hear more about this. So, yeah, I know we're almost out of time. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. And I know, a lot of people, when they're in these relationships, they feel very alone, but we know that this happens a lot, and we know that there's so many people out there living in these situations and feeling like they don't have anywhere to turn to. So a book like this would be really helpful to them. I'm going to link the book and your website in the show notes, so for anybody wanting to find you and to learn more about your story, they can do that there. And just thank you so much for coming on.
I also I'm on Instagram, Cultivating Freedom 2024. And in there, I have a lot of insights and terminology and experiences on my Instagram too.
That's great. Yeah, I know. I love going on Instagram just to learn. I learn so much on there. And also, it's nice to see the progression of other people's healing journeys. As you follow them for a couple years, you can be like, wow, look how far they've come. I remember 2 years ago when they were doing this, and now they're doing this. And so it's just really beautiful and inspiring and motivating to be able to see, like, now you're doing speaking engagements and you've written a book, and I'm sure there's people who've known you for a while that's like, this has been such a wild journey just to see. So very impressive. But thank you again for coming on and sharing, and thank you everybody for listening to this week's episode of Open Wounds Podcast, and we will see you next week.
Bye for now.